So today I'm going to talk about how China is transforming global communication. And I've been in the region for 21 years in Greater China, basically all my adult life. And my teenage years, but my adult life has always been spent there in China. And I really feel in the last 2 or 3 years, there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out of China that everybody should be aware of. And I'm going to talk a lot today about social commerce and what it means for marketers. And I do think it has inspiration for India and other markets around the world as e-commerce grows. And India, as we all know, is the second biggest internet market in the world right now. And e-commerce is growing quickly. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So like I said, I've been in Greater China 20 years. I've just taken on a role last year to drive creativity and innovation in the region. That's why I'm here, meeting with clients, talking to people, and learning more about India, getting inspired. And so I hope what I can impart today is you disagree with a lot of it, hopefully. Maybe you disagree and say, we can't do that in India, it doesn't work. Great, right? It's meant to be inspiration, but I think also action. So my thesis really is that innovation is moving from east to west. And so I think what's happening now around the world is a perfect storm of innovation. So previously, we had Europe to a degree, some stuff in the US, for example, but I think now in China, given its unique ecosystem, there's a lot of advancement, especially around e-commerce, especially around social commerce, and influencer marketing. You know, influencers become their own social commerce platforms right now. And what is happening every day is mind-boggling. Live streaming is 400 million people today. People walk around the street. It's like something out of Black Mirror, streaming themselves, right? Every day. It's hyperactivity, right? Will it happen in India? I don't know. So I don't know if you follow the media, but you've seen a lot of this stuff recently. You see China moving on Wired magazine, Newsweek, The Economist talking about innovation, right? So getting the most amount of patents, going from a copycat to an innovator, right? China's biggest app, which is WeChat. Who's got WeChat? Anybody? If you go to China, you must get it, right? That started as a copy of WhatsApp, right? It was a messaging service. Now it's an everything app and has everything you ever need in it, right? And people who live in China, when they go abroad, get really frustrated. You can't do everything on your phone. You can't pay for a taxi, send somebody some money. You know, you can't book your ticket, book your flight, right? So how on earth did this happen? How did we get to China becoming an innovator? Because you think about it, China only opened up in the late 1970s, right? And really there were no shopping malls, no retail of any structure until the 1990s, right? But then they really adopted social media very quickly, so you could leapfrog, right? As in many places around the world, TV media is dying, traditional TV media is dying, print journalism is dying in China, it's all going online. I think India is super unique in that all forms of media are still growing. You see print media growing at single digits, you see TV growing at double digits, it's still a quite exciting market for that, but China's gone really digital. And there are kind of 4 areas that I'd like to factor, like why has China risen to this innovation leader? What has really happened? And there's 4 kind of areas. China, I would say, has made like a re-entry to the global market. China, since 2008, they hosted the Olympics, has been much more confident on the world stage. And you see leaders like Xi Jinping, these people being quite confident at Davos and these global events, right? So China now has a lot of confidence because they've been shown that their economy is stronger than the US. So in 2008, global financial crisis, China was standing tall still, right? So they have a renewed confidence. And I feel there's confidence in India at the moment. I really feel like when I talk to my colleagues, I move around, there's a buzz, right, around it. That's really good. I think that gives way to innovation and creativity. There's a rising middle class, or the millennials, as people call them, but in China we call them the post-90s, right? Born in the 1990s, right? Those guys have so much spending power and so much share of voice. Social commerce, as I mentioned, has become a huge deal in China in the last 2 or 3 years. So e-commerce, as we all know, China is the biggest e-commerce player, and social commerce now is going to the next level. We believe that in the future, all commerce will be social in nature. Think about that. I'll come back to it later. Influencer marketing in China is massive. They yield so much power, and we co-create with them for brands and drive commercial results for our clients. So influencers are bigger than media in many ways, because people trust influencers more. They seem like real people, right? And they can relate to them, right? I said seem like, right? You heard that. So back to my nice little photo from my old balcony at my house. So China has really had a re-entry into the global economy. What do I mean by that? We have these gentlemen on stage, all men unfortunately, but we have a core leader who's really taken the reins. So he's taken absolute power, and he's a strong man, right? And he has a master plan. The previous presidents in China were focused very much domestically, right? They have an external policy, right? And you've probably seen some of these things they talk about. So I think also, given what's happening with the US president and the sort of America first approach. We've seen Xi Jinping step onto the international stage and be seen as the globalization driver. Who would have thought it, right? China is the globalization driver. And you have this, right? He goes to Davos and he becomes the speaker of the globalization world. It's unusual, right? Normally that's Obama, right? Or the US president, right? So China is stepping a little bit into this void right now on the global stage and being seen as a driver of global commerce. Very interesting. You've probably seen this before. The Belt and Road. I've seen a lot of negative commentary here in the media about this. But China has a grand vision to do what the US did before. Export capacity around the world, right? Steel making, cars, computers, phones. I noticed mobile phone guys everywhere here. Vivo, right? The Chinese brand sponsoring the IPL. I see that, right? We have a rising middle class like we do in India. By 2020, the middle class in India and China will be way, way bigger than Europe or US. That's going to fundamentally change how we do marketing and communicate in many, many ways. And it's already happening in China. So this is my little table here. So if you look at today, where we are, so by 2020, China's middle class will be 167 million, India 53. This number is between 16 and 34,000 US dollars. So if you look at this, right, we have US, Japan, Europe. These are the two drivers of the global economy going forward, the middle class, right? And I think this is going to be very powerful for us in China, but also India to really create models that work for us versus what we do in the US before or Europe, right? There's going to be a whole new revolution around this. And in China, what we really focus on, if you don't win the youth, you win nobody. Because social media in China is so prevalent, right? Everybody has a smartphone. So 85% of people have smartphones. And younger people, as they do in India, I think, they recommend for their family members, right? So my wife, for example, recommends for her family. She's a great driver, and they're a great driver of social media, right? And young people, look at this. 85% of men between 25 and 29 purchase luxury products in urban areas. Isn't that insane, right? Okay, it's not a typo, it's a real thing. You know, young Chinese are increasingly well-traveled, individualistic, cosmopolitan, not like you'd think, right? If I asked my guys tomorrow in the office what they'd like to do, all of them would say they'd travel the world if I paid them. They would all want to be somewhere else, right? New York, London, Rome, Mumbai, whatever, they'd like to travel and like this have a massive wanderlust, right? Because they come from, often they're single adults, they like to be made to feel special, right? So you've got to talk to them in a very personalized way in your communication. And this is not a typo either. They spend 30 minutes per day on one e-commerce site called Taobao, owned by Alibaba. 30 minutes per day. It's not a joke. In my office, I used to try and ban e-commerce during the day, but of course I embraced it. Now we have a reception desk that's for our colleagues. The other night I was going home and I saw an intern getting into the elevator and he had all these bags with him and I said, is he stealing stuff from the office? And so I asked him, what's in the bag? And he said, oh, today, Taobao had this 2-for-1 special. I bought like two woks for my dad, and I bought this coffee machine and stuff. And he was like, Darren, it's entertainment, right? Like you can't believe. And so we could talk about e-commerce with mobile commerce. So China, in many ways, is a parallel universe. Because China's internet system has been closed off to the world, there are different platforms there, different behavior, right? And so I think what is really interesting now is that we have Facebook, Google, who are great sponsors of this event, but we also have Tencent, Alibaba, who've also developed their own ecosystem, right? And these are inspiring each other right now. So if you look at what's happening with Facebook, they're adding buy buttons, right? They're actually trying to drive this commercial result through the purchases, right? Instagram as well. So I think it becomes this great way where you can actually feed off each other, right? To develop something new. And again, I'll say it again. Chinese people spend 30 minutes a day on Taobao. They look really happy, right? In their own world, on a train, like everybody's like totally focused on buying stuff, right? And Chinese e-commerce spending is more than UK and US combined. Why is e-commerce so big in China? People like cheap stuff, right? It's a great way to buy cheap stuff. China has scale, like India does. You know, there are 100 cities over 1.2 million people, right? There's scale. Shanghai, Beijing, 25 million people, 30 million people, right? Rising middle class. They leapfrog to go mobile first. There's no retail setup existing in many places in China. There was no mall culture, no shopping malls, right? No supermarket. Everybody goes stuff and leapfrogs, right? You go straight to the technology and it makes it all available. And underlying that, which is becoming a big deal in India now, as I understand, with Paytm, right? It's all about how easy it is to make payments, right? So Alibaba and WeChat Pay, look at those numbers, right? So only 55% of China's internet users, right? 55 already, mostly 60, have made mobile payments, and then 20% of users in the US. So it's growing very quickly, right? There are many e-commerce players in China. Tmall is owned by Alibaba, it's the biggest. We work with Amazon. Amazon has about 3% market share, right? So a bit different, okay? There's a video here about WeChat I'd like you to listen to.
WeChat is the world's largest standalone messaging app, but there's a lot more to the platform than just chatting. In China, it's basically its own ecosystem, and brands both big and small are jumping on board. So here are the top 3 things every brand should know about WeChat. Lots of people are using it. There are more than 1 billion accounts and 600 million monthly active users. That's more than both Instagram and Twitter. And to top that off, 60% of WeChatters open the app more than 10 times a day. That's a lot of eyeballs for brands to target. WeChat is more than communication. In China, you can hail cabs, order food, buy movie tickets, play games, check in for flights, send money, book a doctor's appointment, read articles, you get it. It's basically all your essential apps tucked into one. That means users stay logged on, but more importantly, many users have their bank account information linked to WeChat, making transactions seamless. Big brands are signing up. McDonald's China was the first to join by offering coupons to followers. Luxury brands like Burberry take it to another level by creating an artsy, interactive experience tied to their runway shows. Want to customize your sneakers? Nike lets you do that right in WeChat, as well as order and ship them out. WeChat has created a unique ecosystem of commerce and social, and it might be a good idea for brands to keep a close eye on it.
I think brands need to look at what's happening in WeChat. I don't think WeChat will ever come into India necessarily, but what is happening there with functionality, integration, definitely will happen at some stage. So it's worth looking at, right? And you see Chinese investors start to get involved in India, right? There's been a lot of failures, but there's also now you see Alibaba investing in Paytm, I saw, right? Recently trying to scale that up. That's Alibaba's secret weapon is payments, right? It's all about payment. Always control finances and follow the business, right? Influencers in China, I can't overestimate how big they are. They're a key part of our business. The people are at the core of our business to co-create content for clients and also to work with them and use their huge followings. Some of them have like 30, 40, 50 million followers, right? And these are not ghost followers, these are real ones, right? How we evolve the evolution really is from endorsers to co-content creation to really driving commerce now, and I'll talk about those in a few case studies at the end, right? I think what's really happening now, the biggest trend now in China is live streaming, as I mentioned. There are 300 platforms, right? 300. So it's like whack-a-mole in China, right? If something is really hot, everybody creates it, and then see which ones last, right? So Uber was in China for a long time, then they got totally killed by Didi, the local provider, right? But at one stage, there were like 20 Ubers that everyone gets like pushed away, and then some guy stands up, right, and lasts. There are many, many live streaming platforms. This woman here in the video, she's live streaming her life, like something out of Black Mirror, and people give people gifts, like a Porsche. Maybe that's like 50 cents US, right? And they get little gifts, and those become cash coupons that people use, right? And this happens day in, day out. So you imagine if you're in a 5th-tier city, right? Finish work on a factory, you turn onto your smartphone, you look at all this entertainment. See these girls sitting having dinner together in Shanghai. So the other day I was with a client in Shanghai. We looked over and there was 5 girls with their phones on stands broadcasting themselves. And the guy's like, what are those girls doing? I said, they're just live streaming their life. I said, who watches it? I don't know, right? But people watch it and they get paid for it and they do it all the time, right? So KOLs in China are bigger than media. So we still deal with traditional media. Of course, that's very important, right? But what I'm talking about is the differences here, right? So we integrate very closely on KOLs. We have a whole KOL team. We have 60,000 influencers in our network, in our database. This includes celebrities, experts, right? Sports people, right? Celebrity chefs. It includes everything, right? Economists, depending on what we need to do, right? And then we have 6,000 major celebrities, right? And these guys here, what is everyone's dream in China is to become a KOL, a key opinion leader. It's everyone's dream in my office. They want to quit and have like 1 million followers and get paid to go to events and write stuff. That's their dream, right? And all these people here, these 2 here, are former journalists. They used to be with Vogue, the other one was with Cosmo. And now this guy here, Go-Go Boy, cool name, right? Go-Go Boy. He has 12 million followers, and real followers. And he reviews luxury and fashion, but he writes in a very witty, acerbic way. So totally what those publications don't write, he writes. And people love him for it, right? And now he's even started selling his own stuff on his social platforms. So he's evolved to become like an e-commerce one-man show, right? And this other guy here, Han Huohuo, he reviews handbags, right? And his name is Mr. Bags online, right? And so he also started to sell bags himself, right? So he goes and curates the bags he likes, he chooses them, and he does flash sales with like Christian Dior or somebody else, and he sells them through his own channel. Pretty cool, right? So these are the kind of 4 big trends that have really happened in China. So the whole reentry, the increased confidence in Chinese people feel more confident now to go onto the global stage. There's a rising middle class. It's a really big thing right now. It's growing more and more. Social commerce is really a massive thing now. So everything is driven through WeChat and through a lot of the other social media. And influencers wield enormous power in China. You've got to embrace it. So what do all these mean for us? At Weber Shandwick in China, we're a PR firm, right? So 4 or 5 years ago, we totally rethought the way we deliver work for clients, right? And this is kind of the crux of what I'm saying today. We totally rethought what we were doing. We looked at the future of, and this was before influencers became big. We could see that social media was driving and coming forward. It's like a train you see coming, right? It's coming at you or towards you or away from you. And then where do you step towards it? So you need to invest in the future. I think India is very similar at the moment. You have massive growth in online video, internet, right? But you have to step into the breach and embrace it and work out, what is my agency going to look like in the future? How do I rethink what I do? So we had this whole thing recently about, we want to create the agency of the future, we want to do it now, right? We want to throw away all those traditional ways of doing PR. Just throw them in the bin if we can, right? And really go after the integrated work, and the work that really adds value to clients and drives their business. A big focus now is moving from awareness to conversion. Because clients these days and CMOs globally, if you look at the literature, what they do now is need to drive business results, even drive new commerce and new services. So if we're in the industry, we need to be driving business or we're out of here. Our 2 big things were, okay, if we're going to be the agency of the future, what is the same and what is different? So what is the same is public relations, relationship with people, right? That's always important. And so in China, obviously, it's very big on influencer communication, right? Because the individual relationship connection with people. So we're doing a lot of work on AI and that kind of stuff, which is all great, but the people-human element is still going to be crucial to what we do, right? And then we believe, as I said earlier, we take this approach and say, look, in the future, all commerce will be social. Whether it's online to online, retail to offline, right? It's all going to be done through social, right? That's where we approach it. And so we built our business around that. So we created this unique tool called Cloud. Get it? K-L-O-U-D, Cloud, K-O-L, right? Good, all right? And so we developed this in China. It's now being rolled out into Japan and Korea in our offices. So we're actually creating innovation in China now for the rest of the world. And the other thing we do, of course, we put a lot of data around what we do now, investing heavily in data. But our exciting new product launch globally in New York in July will be a new thing called C3. So it's really content, community, and commerce. So this is now becoming Weber Shandwick's new approach to social media. In the old days of social, what we did was we created great content. We maybe did viral videos, got a lot of people engaged in it, right? We built our community. We've got 10 million followers today. Woo! Right? 10 million followers. Big deal. How am I going to monetize those followers? What am I going to do with my followers to mobilize them and make them fans, right? So we drive them to social commerce. So now if you look at what's happening with WeChat, some of these things like this, there's a buy button, right? People want to have commerce content now, but they want to know if they can buy the thing from the content. They want to make a short purchase journey. So we're doing awareness campaigns. At the same time, there's a conversion element, right? And we're experimenting right now. There's no perfect solution for this, but it's really interesting to try and work it out, right? So I'll show you a few cases here. Everyone knows Ocean Spray, cranberry, love it, right? So every year in around November, October, November, they have a harvest in Boston. And we've worked with them for 4 years in China. We used to take like an influencer over and do some media relations and all that and get some articles out, but it just wasn't doing anything to convert anything. It's nice for a little bit of a short spike in awareness. So we thought, what could we do? So we invited these 2 influencers, right? One has like a food, like he's a vlogger. They have like a YouTube channel in China, but not YouTube, it's called Youku, right? And she has a travel show. And we created a script with them about how do you talk about the cranberry bog and Thanksgiving in a Chinese way, right? So it's all about in a Chinese version of it, right? If I talk high down at people in China, they're like, whatever, right? It's nonsense. So these guys co-created the script with us. And you see this rig here? We did live stream from Boston. And those are 6 different channels we live streamed on, and the production quality is terrible. But for some reason, people love it, right? So if you're like come from a production house, you go like, oh my God, how can you watch that content? But people like it because it feels real, and people can engage real time, right? Cartier, a very interesting company. Cartier, they have a problem in China where a lot of people think they're for older women, which is okay, right? That's fine. But the client said to us, he kind of made a joke. He said, every year my customers get 1 year older, right? But nobody's replacing them, right? So the brief was, how do we make Cartier relevant to millennials, right? What do we do to make a big iconic move that can actually can please your existing customers? Because you don't want to alienate those guys, right? But how can we make it popular for people in their 20s and late 20s, right? So this is actually a man, right? People ask me, is that a woman or a man? It's a man, right? He's a very famous singer. He's like a reality star. He was on The Voice, and he became like this big pop singer, like a great story from the countryside, became popular, this iconic guy, bit of a rebel, right? So we chose him to try and release this new collection, and we did a whole thing where we actually tied in this idea of the nail, which is, you see the iconic nail here? And in Chinese, you can play on the words with nail. Nail also means like, make yourself prominent, make yourself proud, right? Nail yourself down. So we actually did this whole campaign with him, right? And this totally converted all his fans into Cartier fans. And the thing sold out within a few days, right? So it was a big iconic move, a bit risky. They were really worried about it because normally they choose older like actresses and stuff. This was like a very big iconic move, right? But this shows you the power of influence in China. And this is not about awareness, this is conversion, right? This is changing their whole perception of their business and changing their sales volume, right? I don't think I'll talk about the rest of the case studies, but we did a whole campaign with Kindle where we actually used influencers to drive engagement around reading, because reading was kind of dying off in China. There was no one talking about the power of reading, so we thought, what a great opportunity. Let's talk about the power of reading, right? And how great it is to drive creativity, thinking, that kind of stuff, right? Did that. So the party's already started here in India, hasn't it? The party started last night for some people at our table, and the conditions are really ripe now. Because when I walk around here, I talk to people, I see things, right? You have the fastest growing economy now in the world, right? There's a lot of pride there, right? People are really feeling good about themselves, right? There's a fast growing middle class, right? There's a leapfrog in industrialization, there's digitalization happening, number 2 internet economy in the world, growing exponentially, right? All these things are happening, right? Content creation for a diverse society, that's a pain point for marketers, right? But it's also something different. Different languages, different regions, right? Having to create all this content, right? But it's super important, right? And drive society forward. Indian influencers are rising, right? Not just Bollywood celebrities, right? Not just sports stars, but beauty. You see beauty bloggers rising in China as well. Rising in India. How will that help to shape the new narrative, what the new India means, right? All these things are there and happening right now. India's already on the wave. India has totally transformed cricket. So IPL as a global franchise is amazing, right? And this is the Big Bash from Australia. Now, the Big Bash 3 or 4 years ago was terrible. Nobody would go and watch it, right? They sent guys over to the IPL to observe what was happening, right? They went back to Australia. They said, we need more international players, right? Because before I think, had one international player, which is like, and it's a has-been, right? It's not the frontline player. It's like some guy who played years ago, right? It's like big deal, right? Now we have some of the best players. It'd be great if Indian players would come and play too, right? Virat Kohli playing together with David Warner, that would be cool, right? Maybe they become friends, right? But you see, this has had a profound impact on T20. Now in England, right, in South Africa, they're trying to really emulate what is happening in the IPL in India, and it's totally transforming to a new audience. The growth of viewership last year in India was like 40% of IPL. It's incredible, right? It's a great business opportunity for marketers, for people to watch, entertainment, right? It's really amazing. So India is having this amazing impact around the world, and I just use cricket as an example because I like cricket, right? Okay, but thank you.